Welcome to the Public Eye. I'm Ronnie Thwaites. This is Bridge 99 FM. Today is Wednesday, January the 5th, 2022. Welcome to the Public Eye. Every Wednesday at this time, we bring the issue straight to you. We don't malice or slander anybody. We don't gossip. We just give the facts and the reasonable conclusions that can be drawn from those facts, eh? And we start with the feeling that we are a blessed people and an anointed land. And we can do much better for ourselves, all of us, than we're doing right now. And so we praise those who are making efforts in that regard. We criticize ourselves and those who aren't doing what we should, or maybe falling short on the good intentions and the great prospects that the Jamaican people have. So join us with an open mind, with a reasoned intellect, and share with us. You can call us. The studio line is 876-676-4996, and the WhatsApp and text line is 876-551-5782. This morning on the Early Rise, with my co-host Chief Colonel Charles, he and I had an enlightening discussion with managing partner of Stock Raises Jamaica. He's a Jamaican, Calvin Logan, who considers himself a serial entrepreneur and a pioneer in the digital marketing industry. But that's not what we talked about. We talked about his expertise in pulling together investors from abroad to Jamaica because the stock exchange platform is so efficient, so good, and to encourage more and more investment funds to come into Jamaica to stimulate jobs, to stimulate export earnings, to stimulate business generally. We stand for the increase, the legitimate, lawful increase in the production of goods and services, you see. We don't defend gambling. We don't defend scamming. We don't defend hustling of an illegal sort. We make a distinction between those who hustle illegally and those who hustle in small business, in trading, in all kinds of things. That part is good. We don't despise wealth. We value it. Yes? It's a product of grace. What matters is how you got it and what you do with it, eh? That's a key element. So thank you for being part of the Bridge Nation, tuning in to Bridge 99.13579 on the FM dial. And you can also watch our live stream. Yeah, I recommend that. www.thebridge99fm.com, wherever you are in the world. And I'm told too, listen up, Instagram at the Bridge 99 FM works. And there's a YouTube channel, Bridge 99 FM. We're everywhere. Everything is everything. Later on this morning, we'll be joined by the head of the Southern Trelawney Environmental Agency, Hugh Dixon. I admire him. He's been a leader who has sacrificed himself and taken a lot of abuse and criticism for speaking out about the integrity of his community, the rural area of South Trelawney. And he's going to talk about, of course, the recent decision by government to allow mining in areas adjacent to the cockpit country by this company called Noranda, with whom Jamaica has this partnership. So stay tuned for that. And in the second half of the show, Mr. Michael Derrick Roberts is a communications and social media expert and a business consultant too. Wait, I didn't know you had a profession named political campaign strategist. I should know, eh? Yes, should have known then. Right. And he's head of a consultancy agency, Common Sense Strategies. He'll join us to talk about issues surrounding this very unfortunate, unseemly allegation against former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo. He's supposed to have been troubling and touching members of his staff. And they have taken a decision, have the prosecutors in New York, that one particular charge is not going to be proceeded with because they don't have enough evidence to prove. Does he have a thought on this? What insight into these matters can come from our partner Beauregard on Irie Jam FM, who we join in an hour's time? Yes? It's amazing, I scratch my head often about the American nation because they defend every striking kind of sexual expression, anytime, anywhere, yeah? And of course, we lap it up derivative and imitative as we are. And then when some public official is caught doing something which in other circumstances would never raise an eyebrow, my God, how they takes it on him or her? Is it her as well? Well, double standard, is it? I wonder. Anyway, what we defend is what is right, what is decent, what is respectful, whether it be a man or a woman, whether you're a politician or you're a street sweeper, it really doesn't matter, eh? So let's set the standard, and I'm sure we'll have an interesting discussion on that point. Right, so coming up, the interview with Hugh Dixon of the South Trelawney Environmental Agency. Keep that dial locked on 99. Follow Bridge Nation on Instagram at the Bridge 99 FM and share your comments with us using the hashtag Public Eye Open Mind. We'll be back right after this break. You're listening to The Public Eye. I'm Ronnie Thwaites, The Bridge 99 FM. Stay tuned. Thanks very much for being with us. This is The Public Eye and The Open Mind on The Bridge 99 FM. Coming up, Mr. Hugh Dixon of the South Trelawney Environmental Association. I'm vexed about this permission that's been given to mine any kind of lands in the St. Anne, Trelawney, anywhere in Jamaica. We're losing off of it, you know. Hear me talk it straight. When we lose enough of it, there's no money in it that can compensate for the environmental rape that is going on. And a whole heap of people going to have to move, a whole heap of people going to lose their cultivation. And although Purnell and others think otherwise, I don't believe anybody who tell me that they're going to restore the land in a way that will allow for cultivation and use of it after them take the bauxite and gone. How much money are we making from it? And what about the restoration plans? No notice? Well, let's find out. Hugh Dixon, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Thwaites. How are you, sir?
I'm well, thanks. Happy New Year to you, too, though the news isn't good for the new year, but here we are. I'm Hugh Dixon, veteran environmental campaigner from South Trelawney. I listened to you on Beyond the Headlines yesterday. Thank you for the interview. But tell me, if my hearing was faulty, was there any indication of two very important things? One, how much money are we likely to get from this escapade with Noranda, sir? Do you know at all? Has that ever been asked?
You know, Mr. Thwaites, we have, in fact, requested economic analysis, and I think in another place, you and your economist would have taken a brief look at it.
Yeah.
And when you think of the cost side,
right,
and match it against the revenue side, I think it shows clearly that we have been subsidizing bauxite mining in Jamaica for some time now.
Which is what the Jamaican economy has done in many other sectors, including this one, for hundreds of years. And in the 60th year of our independence, Mr. Hugh Dixon, we are continuing to do that by the latest permit granted by by NEPA. That is disgraceful in my view.
It is disgraceful, Mr. Thwaites. It's disgraceful because, you know, I had the opportunity to look at the license that was issued back in 2018. So for that plot of land of 8,335 hectares, the arrangement is to mine it over 25 years.
Yeah.
So they start in tranches, and they would repeat their application to continue progressively.
Yeah.
So you know, when you think of what happened, basically this is the first installment they are getting. And the precedents that would have been set by beginning to mine cockpit country means that it's going to be a challenge to stop the process from here onward, unless we are extremely vigilant.
Hugh Dixon, my suspicion, and I'm entitled to suspect this until there's proper disclosure. My suspicion is that the government has an arrangement which we do not know of. The original contract with that bauxite company and its successors yes,
Yes.
which obligates us to be able to have to provide this land and these facilities over the period of time, and that you are correct that notwithstanding what Mr. Peter Knight says, and he was very weak on the subject, most unconvincing, that this is just a palliative chapter 1 of the rape of that entire spinal section of St. Anne and Trelawney, which we have committed ourselves to and which we can't get out of. I want to be proven wrong, but until then, I hold to that prospect.
Well, Mr. Thwaites, you and I feel that that's the scenario. I am convinced about it based on the information I have and what I have observed copiously over time. And I would hope that, unfortunately, it is realized, because I think we're at the point where more of us need to become vigilant, request transparency, and ask why these commitments can't be reversed. There's so much, Mr. Thwaites, that I sometimes have to be selective in what I say over this medium. But the point is that some commitments have been made. And as common people, we know, you make commitments and you don't want to backpedal on them. But when the world changes around you and you recognize the impact it's going to have on you for the very things you do, you have to open up for people to examine it and expose the things so we can all see it and come up with a conclusion that it's in our best interest.
So let us make some suggestions, more than suggestions, some demands, and I use the word respectfully. Here is the situation. We need to see that original contract between the government of Jamaica and Noranda and its predecessors, correct?
Correct, Mr. Thwaites.
Yeah, that's one. Two, we need to know exactly the amount of money that inures to Jamaica, whether it is by a levy rather, or for God's sake. Well, I hope it's not the profit sharing, eh?
Okay.
Yes, but I'm not. It has not been said. Minister Montague, in his sectoral address earlier last year, said that the bauxite levy is reintroduced. But where and when and to what effect is not clear.
It's not clear,
yes.
And that's why the second request is correct, Mr. Thwaites.
And we know
we need to ask them to open up those arrangements so we can see them as a nation, and it's not just limited to the cabinet to see it and say yes.
For business.
We must see it.
Yes.
All of us must see it, and it must be subject to the debates on your program and all the other talk shows.
Exactly,
the media must look at it, and then we can go openly and say to these people who have made a promise.
Yes.
And Mr. Thwaites, I have heard some of the people say they are afraid because of the sanctions and the likely legal ramifications of changing their minds about the commitment. But I believe, Mr. Thwaites, in your second point, if we as a nation, a sovereign nation, as a people can say, we may have made deals and we may have been erred in our judgment, and we think it is necessary to readjust them, I don't see any problem with that. And I don't know why our government would be afraid to open it up for that scrutiny, for others to be brought into the judgment and the weighing it in the balance.
Sure. And nobody's going to hunt them down and run them down or make them feel guilty. We simply want acknowledgement as to what the situation is and an explanation why it is that way.
Exactly.
The second question I wanted to ask, in your in NEPA's discussion of the conditionalities of the lease, has the issue of land restoration been properly dealt with in your view?
No, Mr. Thwaites. Two things are not properly dealt with, and it's available to be seen. If you drive through St. Anne and South Manchester, but let's say more St. Anne, you will see the gouged out plots. You will notice there are housing settlements in some of them, and you will have to ask yourself, wow, this doesn't even have the semblance of restoration, let alone the possibility of being productive. Yes? Yeah. So we don't have that. It's 2022, Mr. Thwaites. We can say to those people who have erred in their responsibility that, listen, you have left some open, and, we would hope that you do the due diligence and do it correctly. But the fact is that we have to look now and say, listen, You have not done that. You have not done it properly. And even that is an outstanding cost to you to get it replaced. But when we look at it, Mr. Thwaites, as Jamaicans, we have to recognize that you can't move 50 feet to 100 feet of soil out of the landscape and get back soil from anywhere to replace it that makes it productive as it was before. It's not possible.
So, well, history proves you right, because all of the so-called restored land from bauxite was first started to be mined 60, 70 years ago, has proven less productive than it was before.
Mr. Thwaites, I'm sorry, I'm not on Zoom, because, I have satellite photographs of St. Anne, Trelawney, Manchester, and Trelawney and St. Anne are easily looked at by satellite, and I encourage you to go to do so. You will notice that St. Anne, the Garden Parish, the center of St. Anne, has a kind of, what would I call it, yellowing or clearing. That is the historic removal of soil and exportation of it because of bauxite mining. The only place you will see genuine green, which is green, closed broadleaf cover, and agricultural production, is on the Trelawney side in Cockpit Country.
Yes. By the way, I hear you are on Zoom. Another time you can turn on your camera if you have that kind of image available. Eh? So we can do that another time. But listen now, I'm going to be pointed. The 1,300 hectares, which is by both of our suspicion the first installment, is largely or is totally in the parish of St. Anne?
It's totally in the parish of St. Anne.
And so I'm calling out now the Member of Parliament for that area. I forget his name, but I believe it's the same area that used to be represented by the late Ernest Smith, who, whatever his political affiliation, would have been strong in denouncing any more gouging out of the sustenance of the land in his constituency. Yes? No, that's what a political representative is for.
I think Mr. Campbell is the person.
Whoever it is.
That previously represented.
Oh, well, whoever. The fact is that we want to hear from that man now, or woman.
Yes.
Yes.
But Mr. Thwaites?
Yes. Has your member of parliament strongly represented in public knowledge the opposition to it?
Mr. Thwaites,
what the heck is this? Piece of sellout people.
Could get the set, Mr. Thwaites. Jesus, I mean, I'm taking deep breaths because the appropriate description of the behavior is something we can't have spoken on this. But they have not even gone into Parliament to make what would be the equivalent of a sterling statement of disgust of the problem, which is happening before them.
So they obviously believe then that what Noranda wants is good for the people in those areas. How can that be? How could one come to that conclusion?
I mean, if I had, Mr. Thwaites, the opportunity to just have audience with somebody who would go into the Parliament of Jamaica and appeal to the cabinet representatives sitting in there to rethink and open up this thing. Don't make it be for us alone. Open it up for public scrutiny, since there may have been errors, oversights that our technical capabilities as parliamentarians didn't allow us to see. The time has come for that. And it is almost as if these people who are representing us are running away, because I say it openly without any reservation. I haven't even seen my member of parliament to be able to make a case for what is happening here. And I would hope through your medium you could encourage her to at least call me to let us have a discussion so she can be representing appropriately the case.
In 2018, Mr. Hugh Dixon, I was sat in Parliament then, and I introduced a motion for the Parliament to fully debate the bauxite and alumina industry with a view to a cost-benefit analysis so that we could move prudently for the future. Yes, the members of Parliament for those areas were there then. Yes, the Parliament never found time for going on 4 years now to discuss that. Never.
And I recall, Mr. Thwaites, and I had to say, you were the only person in that Parliament that brought it up and placed the paper there for consideration. Yeah. And I don't think it has had.
No, it hasn't. Never.
No, it never even got the support of the people who are in the areas affected.
No. Nor of the opposition at the time.
But at the time, exactly.
Yeah, well, the point I'm making is that the people of southern Trelawney and southern St. Anne and other bauxite areas are you're on your own, you know.
Mr. Thwaites, I'm using your medium to say to the people of Gibraltar, Madras, Barnstable, Retreat, Spring Garden, Alps, Ulster Spring, Sawyers, you need to get off your laurels, organize yourselves, understand what we are up against, and have some sense of responsibility to resist the onslaught that is about to take place in the cockpit country. It can't be Mr. Ronald Thwaites on this program, Public Eye, on the bridge, appealing to the people in the diaspora and me trying to make a bid as a small environmental agency operating out of South Trelawney. We all as a people have to recognize that if those people who we put with the authority to take the positions of leadership and responsibility are not prepared to represent us, we need to organize by ourselves to do the things that are going to protect our interests going forward, or are we going to be left destitute?
I have a couple more questions for you. First of all, there was a hint in this statement made by NEPA that this curious response by Mr. Knight that I heard broadcast, that they weren't formally informed about further applications for further mining leases. What did you make of that, Mr. Dixon?
Well, Mr. Thwaites, what happens in the case of the permit? If it had followed the protocols established by the government of Jamaica, NEPA would have got an application for mining, which would have been subject to EIA and investigations, yes? And that would have allowed for the scientific observation and the people in response to make a determination of whether this EIA warrants a permit to go in and mine. The thing went the other way. So what Mr. Peter Knight said, which is very awkward, and you just stated it, is that he doesn't have any indication that there is any more application due. That's where the conflict of interest comes in, Mr. Thwaites, because you have to remember that the person getting the lease or who is applying for the permit is the government of Jamaica, along with Noranda, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Mr. Peter Knight's bosses are the very people applying for the permit.
So him can't say no.
NEPA is
All him can do is Jim Screech it and sweeten it. And I am choosing my words deliberately. Let all listeners, particularly those in the diaspora, know that the government of Jamaica is a majority partner in this bauxite application. Yes?
Is the majority. So when Mr. Peter Knight says that, I have to interpret him to be saying, listen, my bosses don't tell me that I am to think of anything else, but give a portion here, you know, give them a 1,324
start with that
right now, and just hold your corner, because we don't have it. You don't need to be interested in what happens 3, 4, 5 years down the line.
We'll allow things to cool off and then we come again.
Yes, and when Ronald Thwaites and Hugh Dixon is no longer making noise and people settled into the 9-day one that
we did by this. Yes. No. Another issue I want is, what about this notion of a buffer zone? Is that a sufficient palliative for interest?
Mr. Thwaites, the Dale Weber report defines cockpit country as a core, a transition zone, and a buffer. And it's very clear. You would have gone through that report.
Yes. When
we think of the specific area of SML 173, and you go in to mine an area, and then you say that, listen, we're going to mine this area, but we're not going to mine around the school ground. So it's like you're saying that the school play field and a radius around the school of maybe a half mile is out of reach. and therefore that is the so-called buffer.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's what they're using. So all around the school will be mined, all around the community will be mined.
Yes.
But you're giving the impression that the mining will start maybe a mile or so off. And they're also claiming, as I've seen in documentation, that the dust nuisance of that mining won't go beyond a very short distance. And they try to limit it. The fact is that, as I heard a gentleman on another program saying yesterday, the Sahara dust comes over here every summer from across the Atlantic into the Caribbean.
So what do we expect?
So if you have a little, I'm looking at SML 173 as I speak to you this week, as I usually do. Any kind of dust a mile off from here is going to affect my water supply, my respiratory issues. So you're affected. So where is this buffer? What is the buffer?
Yeah. Well, what are the finally? What would I see if I came into the area, which is going to be mined for the start? What would I see? Would I see barren land? Would I see trees? Would I see some crops? Are there settlements of people? What does it look like?
Mr. Thwaites, what you will see if you come in, and I'm glad you asked that question, quite a pertinent one, you will see what in the EIA is described as grasslands. They are productive soils in fallow. Yes. That means people have rested them to move on to cultivate other areas, usually areas that are closer to the road network because you want to be able to harvest and be able to get to market. So what is being described as grasslands and being given the impression of unproductive because they have bauxite deposits are the most fertile soils in Jamaica.
Look at that. Yes.
So what? And I used the earlier telling you about the satellite photograph. If you look at St. Anne, what you will find is gouged out areas of that fertile soil. So when you define them as grasslands, as was done in the EIA to give the impression that they are not productive, is really tricking us into believing that, listen, these are scrublands that you can forfeit. Yeah. But if you look back, and I'm doing a study on it, Mr. Thwaites, hope in due course you can get. When you look back at productivity that has been lost because of the removal of those soils from an area like St. Anne, you realize how much productivity has been cut back. And by extension, the same is going to happen in these areas. So if you went to any of the communities that are slated to be mined, you will find settlement, which is a small community. Let me call it district.
Yes, I know that.
100. And out from there, a radius within 2-3 miles or 3 miles is bottomlands with productive soils. Some have been left to follow. In the old days, some were left in a little weed property. Some are where people get their herbs and things, but they are left there. If we are to expand our cultivation production, if Ronald Thwaites and Hugh Dixon said, listen, we want to plant some yam as part of the increased productivity, these lands that are going to be taken out by bauxite mining are the lands that you and I would be identifying for productive agriculture. Yeah. So if you went into a community, I mean, Gibraltar is, for example, on the cusp of the SML 172, which is already being mined. So if you went into those communities that are now going to be mined, you would see a significant part of the community that is already mined out, and the community itself now is going to be mined out, and those tracts of land that are to be gouged out, which are fertile. And let me repeat, Mr. Thwaites, the Terra Rosa soil, those red soils, which have deposits of bauxite, are the most fertile. In fact, the exporters will tell you that those soils produce the kind of yellow yams that make the export of that crop most acceptable when it reaches the foreign market.
What's the next move, Mr. Dixon?
Mr. Thwaites?
Is there going to be a community meeting? Is there
It's
likely
going
to
to
be
have to
some
be
response?
community meetings. It's going to have to be community leaders calling together. It's going to be having to be a lot of Zoom connection with people to give them encouragement to say, let's organize, let's have access to the information. Let's call in the experts, the geologists, the agriculturalists, the environmentalists, to give you an explanation of what you're up against, because these organized groups of people in all these communities are going to have to be the voice to protect their interests, because there is nobody else elected that is doing that job.
We call upon people in the diaspora to rally. There was considerable interest many months ago. You would remember, and we stand with you in this struggle. We hope to hear more from you. This program is always open to hear your concerns. Thank you so much for your bravery.
Thank you so
Mr.
much.
Hugh Dixon of the South Trelawney Environment Association. This is the public eye and the open mind. It's a Bridge 99. We'll soon come back. COVID is raging, yeah? Omicron is with us. We have to keep our heads, but we have to be careful. Morning, caller. Afternoon, caller.
Good afternoon, Sir Ronald.
Hi, how are you, sir? Happy New Year.
Oh, thank you so much, Ronnie. Best wishes.
Thank you for keeping faith with us.
Oh, you're more than welcome, Ronnie.
Yeah.
Best wishes to your family, to yourself for the new year 2022, to your staff members, to the management of Bridge 99 FM, and continued successes to you all. And I say this with all sincerity.
Well, I know you do, and thank you very much.
Might I add to Ronnie, oblige me in saying that as an opinion writer and public commentator myself, I am taking time out to specifically commend you on your outstanding Gleaner columns, which were scholarly written throughout last year, which I thoroughly found incisive, and yourself as being a top newspaper columnist, I wish you continued success throughout this year in your columns and on this outstanding, widely listened and very, very first-class talk show.
Thank you very much. Can I ask a comment I'd like to press you on there? I've received some criticism that occasionally in my writing I use the Jamaican language. Does that offend you, or is it an authentic representation of who we are and how we speak?
I think it's an authentic representation of who we are, and I think I really enjoy reading your columns. That's an important part of our culture.
Well,
and I know that there are some persons who are not at all appreciative of that aspect.
Yeah.
But I have no problems with that.
It brings up broader questions. But I was asked very strongly recently. The person said, "But you are fluent in English. Why on earth would you speak or write like that?" Now that statement, with respect to the person, and it's a person I do respect, it involves a contempt for the speech patterns, indeed for the wider culture, that is very much a part of us, an integral part of us as Jamaicans, eh? So
yes, absolutely.
We are bilingual people, and there is no problem once we make ourselves easily understood. There is no problem in expressing one's views in a bilingual fashion.
You're absolutely correct, Ronnie.
Yes. Okay, so thanks very much for that. I'm much encouraged. What's your thought today?
I would like to take this opportunity to applaud, commend, and congratulate the Senior Superintendent of Police in command of the elite Counter-Terrorism and Organized Crime Investigations Unit, Anthony McLaughlin, and to commend all the hardworking, dedicated, and devoted intelligence officers, security analysts, and detectives attached to the CTOC office in Kingston, to the hardworking investigators attached to CTOC's Special Operations Unit based in Kingston, who have been doing an excellent job in investigating organized crimes and gang related activities. And also, I am quite aware of the hard-working detectives attached to CTOC's Montego Bay office. I am calling from St. James. I know them to be a high-performing team, and they are among the country's most professional officers, and importantly, of the highest levels of performance, integrity, and character. I am very proud of the CTOC team, both in Kingston and Montego Bay, and I urge them to continue the excellent work. What I am hoping for in the new year is for the Jamaican people to have a fair amount of faith, trust, and confidence in elite agencies such as CTOC, and be willing to provide the necessary information that they may have on organized criminal activities or cybercrimes. Provide the information to CTOC, and I can assure them that it will be dealt with in a professional, secure, and expeditious manner. The fact of the matter is, Ronnie, there are many times in this country when persons posit the narrative that they cannot trust the police to give them certain information.
Yeah.
But when certain specially vetted units, such as CTOC, is established, and there are avenues for the Jamaican people to give information on serious criminal activities, they need not complain about not having an outlet. They can call agencies such as CTOC, provide the information to them, and play their part in assisting for the relevant investigative agencies such as CTOC to deal with these matters. The crime problem, Ronnie, is out of control. And the Jamaican people will have to understand that without they playing their part in assisting the police and agencies such as CTOC, then the situation will only continue to get worse.
You know, I want to agree with you and share the commendations that you offer based on the limited information that I have.
Yes.
It is so important if any element, indeed most elements, one would want the whole of the police force, can garner the confidence of that reposes in particularly in this agency. Now, I'm being careful in what I say, caller, but the distrust of the police is a justified response in many cases, and it part of the renaissance of Jamaican culture has to be the removal of those suspicions and the restoration of complete confidence as far as possible in the law enforcement agencies, you know.
Yes.
And yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Ronnie.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
No, I'm saying that the history doesn't bear out the basis for such confidence. I myself have very, very great difficulty trusting all police persons, I have to tell you. Yes?
Yes.
And it is based upon 40 years of experience in the law and in political and community life. Huh? But I am anxious, caller, to join you in what you have said, because if someone with a careful eye and a pure spirit like your good self has looked at this particular branch of them and said, look, these people are okay, you can trust them. My goodness, what a step forward in life that really is.
Yes, a former police commissioner who will remain nameless, he publicly stated some years ago, and I am just concretizing what you have just said.
Yeah.
The former police commissioner stated that the police force is very corrupt. It is very corrupt, more so in St. James and in Western Jamaica. And unless the corrupt officers, many of them in Western Jamaica, he said publicly, who are involved with lottery scamming, gang-related activities, and drug trading, if those officers are not investigated and extricated from the police force, then it will be very difficult, or it will be very hard for the police force to effectively deal with the escalating crime problem, especially within Western Jamaica.
Yes. Well, I'm thoughtful though, as you speak of your own location. Policing in St. James has become an exceptionally difficult and I want to say thankless task, because St. James has for the last few years been been specially afflicted with recurrent incidents of crime.
Yes.
Yes, and therefore one has to be both insistent on accountability and law-abiding policing, but at the same time extremely sensitive to the pressure and to the inordinate demands made upon members of the force.
Yes. The fact of the matter is, Ronnie, that things in St. James have become so serious in terms of the criminal activities that sometime last year a newspaper report stated that the parish of St. James now has the most organized, the most well-structured, the most technologically savvy criminal gangs. They are operating within St. James presently. So you see the devastating levels of crimes which are taking place have to do with those seriously organized gangs which are operating in St. James. And unless these gangs are seriously investigated and dismantled, and the gang leaders and gangsters brought before the court with the requisite evidence and have them convicted and have the proceeds of crime applied to them.
Yes, very important.
If you do not arrest them, convict them, and seize their assets, take the profit out of crime,
yes,
then the problem will continue to get worse, and that's the present situation here in St. James.
But I thought that was what we said we were doing or had done. First of all, we were told that this was all of the legislative measures that I ever voted for in Parliament to strengthen the police the powers of the police force, to send in the army with them. The times when we voted for the states of emergency for the Zozo in one particular enclave of St. James. Why has it not had a curative effect, caller?
Well, the fact of the matter is that
it's getting worse every time Minister Chang announces the number of gangs. They go up. They don't go down.
Unless the gangs are found, Ronnie, they are dismantled. Unless the entry points where the illegal guns, ammunition, and drugs are coming in, unless those entry points are found, and unless the masterminds who are importing them into Jamaica are found and arrested and charged, then the situation will only get worse, because Minister Chang enunciated some time ago that according to police and army intelligence to him in his brief, that approximately 200 illegal felons are entering Jamaica each month. Can you see the magnitude in of the amounts
yes.
that would enter Jamaica if you look at a 5-year period?
Yes. Well, I'm really asking, why haven't we made more progress? Is it that the police need more human resources? They can't want more capital goods than we have been spending on. We've been bursting the capital budget for the Ministry of National Security.
Yes.
Is it this issue of mistrust that you began by making such an exception, an important and valid exception to that? And one could ask even anterior questions to that. What is this allurement of gang culture to the young people or to anybody in St. James? Why is it that people who flaunt their wealth and clearly have no legitimate source of it are not suspected, questioned, etc. about this? Am I just being mischievous, Scott, or are these fairly logical issues that would have to be treated?
They're important issues which have to be treated. The government had committed, they had agreed with the Crime Monitoring Oversight Committee that the Unexplained Act and the Account Monitoring Act would have been promulgated into law, which would allow the Financial Investigations Division, MOCA and MOCA West only, to have application and usage of these acts to investigate these high-value criminals. These acts have not been even debated in Parliament. Secondly, when I speak to sources close to agencies such as MOCA West and CETOC, they are still strapped for cash, for resources rather. So therefore, when you have these specially vetted units which require resources, the relevant resources need to be channeled into these two agencies, allow them to do their work, and I am sure that much more positive inroads and arrests would take place. So that's the issue as it relates to the crime problem here in Jamaica, because we cannot, unfortunately, Ronnie, I am a supporter of the police force, but there are fundamental problems with corruption within the force. I am excluding CETOC and MOCA in this regard.
But then, sir, I appreciate the roundness of your statement, but the one thing that national security cannot complain of in the last 2-3 years is the absence of every available resource that the public could possibly afford. If you look at the amount of money that they have been given in terms of a capital budget, it ought to be ample. When you tell me that some elements of them are still under resourced, what is happening?
Well, I heard the chairman of the Police Federation, Corporal Rohan James, stating eloquently that there is a problem with the resources in how they are allocated within the police force, and that in some cases, the resources that are required within the police force are being shifted to the army, and that is having a prodigious negative impact and effect on the police force addressing this country's serious crime problems.
Well, that if that is so, and I have heard the same remark, then that surely then there needs to be a full rationalization of what is going on there. When I inquire of rank and file policemen what they take home for a month, the temptations must be very great, and the vulnerability extreme, caller.
Yes, a police constable takes home approximately, after deductions, between $90,000 and $100,000 per month.
Yeah, well,
and when you have a situation, Ronnie, where the government had agreed with the Police Federation to pay them for 8 years of overtime hours, and the government has now dismantled that agreement and is only willing to pay them for 2 years of overtime payment. I think it is scandalous.
I saw. Well, not a good situation for us to begin the year. However, let us face our reality, and with the kind of balance and maturity that your remarks bespeak, then let us see how we can do better. Eh? Thanks so much for all you've said. We look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. All the best to you and your listeners. I appreciate it.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
again. This is the public eye and the open mind. We are supporters of the security forces when they act legitimately and they act according to law. We are against them when they behave in a way that is disrespectful of people, whether they are alleged to have committed a criminal act or not, and when they break the law. So let's get that perfectly clear. Eh? It's not a question of any blanket condemnation or, on the other hand, any blanket endorsement. And I appreciate the sensitivity and nuance of the caller's speech. I do believe from previous calls that he does know what he's talking about. He has been close observer to the activities of the security forces. This is the Public Eye on the Bridge. We pause. When we come back, we join Irie Jam in New York, and there's much more to come. Stay tuned to the Bridge 99 FM. COVID is ragging in Jamaica right now. We're in the middle of the fourth wave. There's been a lot of comment which I'd like to add to by insisting that we need cheaper testing in Jamaica. The truth is that to get a test in Jamaica, a COVID test, costs you a lot of money. Is what, $8,000 for the antigen test and $20,000 for the PCR test. Now listen, the majority of people cannot afford that. Yes? I believe that people are legitimately, but nonetheless exorbitantly making holy profits off of testing. enough is enough. There's a public health crisis, and you cannot know how you stay, and you cannot know how you might be affecting others unless with regular testing. I heard the cry coming from the doctors that there should be testing mechanisms in schools. The so-called home tests are good, but not that good. Now, in these circumstances, I would like to ask the Ministry of Health to be very clear on what is the bare bones costs of these tests. I have no objection to people making their own arrangements, but is there a facility, a public facility where people can go and get tests, even if it's one in every parish, and not going to get sent back and say, come back next week or come back tomorrow, or you get your result in 2 weeks' time, or any nonsense like that. Yes, but where we can get reliable, affordable testing. It suits you to pay something for it, Everything can be free. But it cannot be more than ordinary workers, ordinary people can afford. And when you think of the responsibilities that most of us have on our one salary for many people, there has to be a concession in that regard. Hello, the reason why we do this program is to try and promote public welfare, And right now, the amount of testing we're doing is simply not enough. Take Dr. Carolyn Gomes and many of the other medical practitioners who are telling us just that. And therefore, if we want to get an accurate picture of how this pandemic is working out amongst us, there has to be far more testing than is done right now. And I endorse the comment made by Dr. Maurice Guy that you can't be reporting only on or testing only limited amount of samples. You have to have a representative quantum and a critical mass in order to be able to get reliable statistics. Nobody wants to be scaremongering, but it is no use trying to hide the situation in order to look good, whether it is for tourism or for business or for whatever else. It is significant that we tell the truth. We're not going to penalize the government politically if the numbers go up. They have very little control over it, except insofar as policies are concerned. We can judge them on the policies, but not more than that. So let us be reasonable with ourselves in this regard. Point: tests must be available as easily and as cheaply as possible. I don't like to hear that some of the nurses and the doctors say they don't get the money for presiding over the vaccination blitzes. How can that be? That money can't short, And haven't we been told that there's been considerable additional allocations made for the healthcare system as there should be in these circumstances? All right, but it's a time to be cautious. It is a time to avoid large public gatherings, as well as to follow the protocols for masking, social distance, etc. Awkward, uncomfortable, probably difficult for many people, but nonetheless, please try. I have traveled over the last weekend in many country parts of Jamaica. And while it's in City Kingston and maybe in other major towns, you see significant masking. In the country parts, COVID now keep, Yeah, but it is keeping, you see. And we have large numbers of people infected now and who have the ability to transfer that and to transmit that to others. It's not right. It's not fair. Take the precautions and go for the vaccination. Hey, Beauregard, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Thwaites.
Welcome and Happy New Year, man.
Same to you, sir.
Thank you. What's your situation with the COVID thing now? We are surging into the fourth wave, and I'm anxious to know, for you to know what's happening here, and also for you to tell us what's happening among the diaspora community.
Well, a few weeks ago when we spoke, Mr. Thwaites, I told you about the multiple waves that were going to come and the multiple variants that were going to come, and it seems like that's coming to pass. Yes, that's definitely coming through. But I heard you talking just now about, people gathering together and the large number of crowds that we saw over the holiday weekend.
Yeah.
And, here in the New York City, I must say, to watch how they hyped up the New Year's Eve celebrations in Times Square with so many people there and so much crowds. And, they didn't think about it before. And now, after all the celebration, they're telling us that, we might be going back into some lockdowns and things of that nature. So I just want to know how responsible we're being,
I'm sure I hear it in your voice that you are weary of COVID, just like the rest of us, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Tired of it now. wanted to take care of himself. And just at the very moment when we thought we were having a little bit more elbow room, we have to go tighten up again, eh?
Yes, it looks that way.
What's the situation with the schools in the city?
Some schools are going back into remote learning. In Long Island, I should say, a few districts have decided to close the districts and let the students operate from home. But Long Island is Nassau County, Suffolk County. Those were the counties that were going against the mandate that the governor had ordered in terms of wearing masks and things of that nature. And they say they weren't going to go along with being any mask police or anything like that. So we see that now it's probably affecting them in the negative way.
Have we? Well, there are no mask mandates, or they have now reimposed them. What is the situation?
Well, they are in place. The new incoming mayor, he kept the old administration's mandates in place for this private sector and for people going into entertainment areas, dining indoor, and for kids above the age of 12, and so forth. So those mandates are still in place.
This is Mayor Adams.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I'm told that he has a record of being a strict man. He's been a policeman, hasn't he?
Yes, he has been, and the first thing he did after being sworn in, right after the ball drop in Times Square, he was sworn in.
We were watching him.
And they're reporting that the first thing he did on his way to work was to call 911 and report a crime that he saw was taking place.
Really?
So that they said that was his first thing that he did.
Well, that's appropriate for a person in his position, isn't it?
Yes.
And it sets a standard, and it's not a standard that's going to break down people's rights. It's a standard that, if properly imposed and executed, is going to be to preserve their rights, eh?
True indeed, and he seems like a very strict man. As you said, he was a police officer before, so
Well, I think New York is a citadel of liberalism, and liberalism is good if it in fact is respectful and it has a moral compass. But to the extent that it does not, it needs discipline and order, and so there are no apologies for that when he imposes it, eh?
I guess not.
No, that's critical. I'm concerned about the people within the fourth wave, with economic activity constricted, that people who just getting back to work may find themselves losing their jobs or being furloughed once again. And there's no public money coming this time around, is there?
No, it's not. A lot of people. Well, right now, according to the CDC, some people who have been vaccinated, and even if you're not experiencing any symptoms and things of that nature, but you have COVID, they say you can still actually go to work. But if you're unvaxxed, you cannot go to work.
Really? Well,
Yes.
That's interesting, because we haven't had that kind of advice here. And once people feel that they have COVID or they test positive, everybody around them want to take bush.
Yes, true indeed.
No, but you can't run an economy like that,
What's that, sir?
You cannot run an economy like that.
No.
You have
But the economy is still being affected, because we see over the holiday weekends where thousands of flights were cancelled in and out of the United States.
Yes, I saw that.
Yes, and they're still trying to get those people home and get that part of the economy going once again with the airlines and travel.
But the job reports in the United States were looking quite good before Omicron bounced you.
Yes, but we're still waiting to actually see the effect that Omicron has on the economy. I'm not sure if Omicron directly, or if it's things that were in place already just now starting to affect the economy,
Yeah, but when I think of the Caribbean community in the tri-state area, many of these people are in healthcare or working with local government, or in relatively, I don't want to say low level, but they're working class people. And I'm anxious that to wonder whether the persistence of the virus is likely to affect their earnings.
More than likely it will. If you are one of those people who are unvaxxed and you're not in a job situation right now, I would say that most of the working class is vaccinated, if you ask me.
I hope you can join with us and appreciate the guests we're going to introduce now. Mr. Michael Derrick Roberts, good day to you and welcome. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Public Eye on the Bridge 99.
I am most honored and pleasure to be there.
Thank you so much. And we're linking not only with Jamaica, but also with the tri-state area through Irie Jam in New York. Mr. Roberts, tell us about yourself. You have Jamaican roots?
No, I'm Grenadian, actually.
Oh, we accept you entirely, 100%. Sir. It's a shame that we didn't federate when we could, but we we still join you.
Yes. Actually, I have a very, very good, very strong relationship with Jamaica.
Tell us how.
Actually, prior to 1974, when we got our independence.
Yes.
I happen to have been trained in the Jamaican Army.
Really?
And then afterwards went on to be, of course, what happened in 79 when we overthrew the revolution. I used to be one of the heads of intelligence and counterintelligence for Prime Minister Maurice Bishop.
My goodness, listen to that.
PRG.
Well, no, that's interesting.
So, and after that, coming to the United States, I was the editor of Carib News,
yes.
Arguably the most prestigious Caribbean newspaper, ran by two Jamaicans, Carl and Phil Rodney.
Yes.
Who took me under the wing literally as their son. Mm-hmm. And from there, I was able to move forward and make my mark in New York City's big, large immigrant community across the board.
Very good. Let me just make a link. The late Maurice Bishop and I were law students at the same period, and
in London.
Yes, and we associated ourselves with the New Jewel movement. And in fact, personnel from the legal firm that I formed came and served in Grenada during the period 80 to 83.
Oh, good, yes. Good. So I was one of the people who was put in prison after the U.S. invasion, and really? I was defended.
That's a badge of honor.
By an incredible Jamaican jurist,
Ian
Ramsey. I think her name is Jacqueline Samuels Brown.
Jacqueline Samuels Brown. She was part of the chamber. She's Queen's Counsel. Oh, yes, well known. And she was in the chambers of Ian Ramsey and others. Very good. Well, now there you go. Yes, look at the link. The Caribbean is united despite every effort to split us apart.
That is so very true. That is so very true. I mean, nowhere is that most prevalent than in Brooklyn.
Yes.
Where I am proud to say there is no place like it on earth. I mean, we have our similarities and differences, and sometimes we get in each other's face, but we're not on top of each other shooting and killing each other. We could iron out our differences. Where I live in East Flatbush, across the street from me is a Guyanese bar. Right next to me is a Chinese restaurant, and there anything in between. There's footprints down the street. Robert Gordon from Jamaica. My company worked with this institution for a number of years as their marketing agency. So I know Bobby very, very well.
Yes.
And right across from Bobby, there's a Haitian restaurant named Talk of the Tongue. So we as a Trinidadians would say, we mix up.
Well, no, listen, that's important, because I think our Jamaican audience needs to appreciate, before we take a short break, that when you are in the diaspora, all of the divisions and the isms and schisms of small nations and other ways in which we divide ourselves become very meaningless. Very meaningless. And you have just given the example of the mix-up in your own community. And I believe that mix-up is for the good, not for the bad. Yes.
I mean, right now,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at what is happening politically in New York City,
Yes.
the city council, and open disclosure, I am going back to the city council after having worked with city council member Yvette Clark.
Oh, yes.
Who is now
one of us, Miss Una daughter.
Yes, and I took Yvette from literally political neophyte right up to Congress. I ran her congressional campaign.
Now listen to me. Michael Derrick Roberts, just hold the line for us 1 minute.
Sure,
we need a short break. We're coming back. This is The Public Eye. Talking with one of the latter, Michael Derrick Roberts, marketing and communications expert and business consultant and political strategist. Mr. Roberts, what is a political strategist? We need to know. I should have known you before I retired from politics.
Oh, good. Yes. Political campaign strategist. I mean, that has evolved since I started 28 years ago. And in my career, I ran about 31 or 32 political campaigns, lost some, won most of them, elected about 9 judges. And I'm pleased to announce that the next corporation council for the city of New York is going to be Judge Sylvia Hines Radix, who comes from Barbados, is married to a Grenadian. So we see how the calendar is again.
Yes.
And we're pleased to have her. And I happen to have consulted and put together a campaign plan for her first campaign when she ran for civil court. Political campaign strategist in a modern context is really somebody who can take your campaign from literally nothing to election day victory. So that person has to be able to put together what the team would look like, what the messaging is look like. And I always tell my candidates that there's 4 M's to winning a campaign. First is messaging, second is media, third is money, and then of course, fourth is make no mistake. That sums up what a campaign strategy does in a nutshell, as far as I'm concerned.
Where you get your degree to become a professional campaign strategist?
Actually, being that it's difficult. I always say that if you went and you get a political degree, political economy, or political. Politics, any political degree around that line, doesn't prepare you for being a political campaign strategist. You can't learn it in university because every campaign is different. And therefore you have to do what we call speak to old experts and old influencers who have done it before. Of the 31 campaigns I've done, everyone is different. Everyone calls for different techniques, different strategies, different tactics going forward, changing messages, etc. So that it is something that you literally have to learn on the job. Barack Obama, for example, when he ran the first time, his campaign strategist, David Axelrod, was a journalist. Didn't have any he had background in politics, having worked in the communication industry in terms of politics, but he was not by any means a university trained campaign strategist.
Right.
So it depends on how you want to come at it.
Well, I'm interested in that American politics, and to an extent Caribbean politics, seems to have many inbred contradictions. New York society, indeed, the liberal Northeast, and in fact countrywide, is extremely tolerant of various sexual activities between men and men, women and women, people who change up their identity or their gender, who live in various consensual forms. And yet when Mr. Cuomo is accused of what is it, touching a woman or groping her or so on, you run him out of office even when whatever his record has been. Is there a contradiction there, or does he deserve all that he's getting?
Well, there is a fundamental contradiction, and you literally hit the nail on the head. Now, Andrew Cuomo is arguably one of the best and most most qualified, one of the most experienced politicians to come out of New York State in a generation. Let us start there.
Yes. That's
he has all of the credentials. He was the secretary of HUD, a very young secretary, married into the Kennedy clan. His father was a fabled governor, he learned at his father's and so forth. And that is Andrew. Now, as you can tell, I have been in my capacity as the editor of Caribbean Times News. I have taken to defending Andrew Cuomo going forward, even before he was exonerated, literally, by the Albany district attorney and, of course, the New York City, the Manhattan district attorney, both of whom investigated him. This man was, you heard nothing. Sexual harassment and sexual abuse is, in my humble opinion, not something you get up in the morning and say, well, let me go start groping some women. It normally follows a pattern, as any sort of psychiatrist will tell you. Now, Andrew Cuomo was the state attorney general in New York. He was the secretary for HUD in Washington. He worked with men and women, a lot of women organizations across the board in building houses in East New York and other places. Not one peep about this guy and his relationship with women. Even to the extent that he supported a number of laws that empowered women, and it's still on the books right now, on the New York City workspace. Now, look at what has happened to this guy. All of a sudden, people are, and let me say clearly, sexual abuse and sexual harassment is an awful thing, and it is a real problem across many examples. There's a lot of it in the Black and Caribbean and Latino communities that do live-in jobs, domestic servant jobs in places in white areas like Long Island. Let's put it straight on the table.
Whoa.
But you never hear that. They're not the ones that the Me Too movement defends. They suffer in silence because a lot of them are undocumented. And that is the other side of this ugly coin, where that happens, but you have a liberal, upper middle class, largely white female group that comes out and said, well, men are dogs. And that has been the mantra with that group. And I'm making the point that sexual harassment is real. It's a problem, and anybody found guilty of that should face the full extent of the law. I am clear on that. As one who have elected 9 female judges, I have worked with women across the board. Actually, I'm going back to City Council as the Director of Communication for Council Member Darlene Neely. She's being sworn in right now as we speak. So I come from a position of defending the women rights. I have 4 daughters. So at the end of the day, when you look at what has been said of Andrew Cuomo, first, that somebody came out and he groped me. Another one said, well, I felt the workplace to be hostile and that he was grooming me for sex, whatever the hell that means. I don't know. I'm yet to hear an explanation on what that means. And that he told me, well, I look good in the PPE. 10 years ago, he touched my face in a wedding and kissed me on my cheek. And I now remember 10 years later that I felt uncomfortable. These are the kind of things that allegation against Andrew Cuomo. And you have to understand the context of the politics. Andrew Cuomo is not the best governor to get along with. I can tell you that up front from working with him in the Senate. So we had an adversarial relationship with both the legislature, the assembly, the state assembly, and also the state Senate. They didn't get along very well. So conservative Democrats, and there is such a thing in this new dispensation, Democrats, we say Republican in name only, the Democrats in name only, there are a number of them in the Senate, who decided that it was a good time to go after Andrew Cuomo. Now, Tish James, the Attorney General, who owes her position directly to Andrew Cuomo. Without him, she could never have been the Attorney General today, saw an opportunity to possibly to further her career, to become the governor. So, of course, she, as we say in New York, the Attorney General can indict a ham sandwich. So they decide to go after Andrew Cuomo, dragging him through the name. The media, of course, it's a sensationalist, it's salacious stories. Went up there, he groped somebody, and you see all of the media sensational around him. But he did not get support from both his Democratic Assembly and the Senate. In fact, the Democrats in the Assembly decided to open impeachment proceedings against him. At that point in time, it became untenable for him to remain as governor, and he resigned.
So you've wrecked his career. What have you proven against him?
Exactly. Now, you have two investigations coming up empty. First and foremost, the one in Albany with alleged groping and every other thing. The district attorney came out and said, well, even though there's credible evidence, as if I'm not a lawyer, but I don't know what any other kind of evidence, we can prosecute him because there's no way that we have any evidence that can stand up in court. So at this time, we've closed our prosecution. He's off the hook. 2 days later, the district attorney in Manhattan, the other thing is this scurrilous thing they did with this man was to literally accuse him of killing old people in nursing homes by sending them to the hospitals and then sending them back into nursing homes.
They get COVID.
During COVID. What they didn't understand is a lot of brown and black people, these nurses and nurses aides who were working with those residents in nursing homes were coming back to communities in Brooklyn that, according to Obama, took a shellacking from COVID. So they were going into the high-rise apartment. Many of them were asymptomatic or going back to nursing homes, and that is not Cuomo's fault. So then they said, we fudged the numbers. He didn't give us the right amount of numbers, and therefore that is like a criminal activity. The investigation found no such thing. It's over. It's done. So at the end of the day, we wrecked the guy's career for once.
Yes. Are there any other charges or investigations pending against Andrew Cuomo?
Well, I would suspect, and I'm not a betting person, but I could bet against this one, that somebody is going to see a dollar bills figure and they're going to try to bring a civil case against him, where the bar is not as high as in a criminal case.
Yes, we know that.
Yeah, and so they would try to enact money damages from him in all other kind of devious way that the legal with no affront to the legal profession is want to do in these cases.
But Mr. Michael Derrick Roberts, this is a picture. I've listened to you, our audience has listened to you. This is a story of nasty politics then.
It is. There's no way to sugarcoat it, and I am not one. Listen, I have worked in the Senate with John Sampson. John Sampson was the first and the second, the youngest black leader of the Senate at a time when the Democrats were in meltdown. We had to literally wring his hand to take the position. He had a run-in with Andrew Cuomo, and to give you the kind of person Andrew Cuomo is, and I'm not here making the case that Andrew Cuomo is a saint. He's not. He's really a Teflon tough guy. John Sampson's star was rising. He was the early 40s, 41, 42 leader of the assembly, and had enormous power with in the old days, the three men in the room to decide on New York State's budget. It would be the leader of the Senate, the leader of the assembly, and the governor. The three of them normally sit down and eke out and do the horse trading as to what the New York State budget is all about. So all of a sudden you have, for the first time, a young black man who traces his roots to Guyana, a Caribbean man,
yeah,
identifies directly with the Caribbean.
Interesting.
And that sent them into every which way. At that point in time, Governor Cuomo was the Attorney General. John Sampson, to empower his community, decided that there was a new casino being built. Don't remember what its name is, in Queens. It's not the Aqueduct, it's other one. I won't even remember it just now. They were going to build that casino there, and that's a $11 billion infrastructure development. As the leader of the Senate, he invited bids, and one of the people that he reached out to for bids were two people: the former Congressman Reverend Floyd Flick from Queens, and the former senator, one of his colleagues, Carl Andrews. They had a community consortium group that would have been able to bid on it. Andrew Cuomo is the one that went after John Sampson and said there was illegality. Again, indicting a ham sandwich. He did a 500 and something page report that went nowhere. The upshot is that John Sampson had to withdraw and urge that black consortium to withdraw its bid. They withdraw the bid. And you know who got it? A Malaysian firm named Genting. That was Andrew Cuomo playing that game.
Hold on now. You see, because does it really have to be that way? Michael Derrick Roberts, because there are a number of people, young people perhaps, whoever, men and women, who aspire towards public service in the realm of politics. But when we come back from the short break, sir, you tell me, if this is the nature of the beast in the most developed democratic system in the world, although that is coming under question federally now, then is this something really that people should aspire after? Hold on a minute. This is fascinating discussion. This is the public eye. The picture is bleak, Michael Derrick Roberts. What would influence an aspiring young person of good intention to come into this kind of swamp?
Yes, and swamp is probably a very apt way to describe it. I have been in politics for a lot of my life, especially in the United States. I have been in politics. I started off with the Dinkins administration when I was editor of Carib News. So that's a real long time ago.
A great mayor.
Yes. And I saw firsthand how they hounded him and literally did a hatchet job on him to get him out of office. And in my conversations with the present mayor, Eric Adams, who I worked with when he was 100-man black men in law enforcement, and when he ran for Marty Markowitz's the first time, and also as a colleague along with John Sampson, who remains very, very close, one of his advisors in the United States Senate. I have told him very clearly that he has to learn from the Dinkins administration as to what happens after the euphoria of the 10-day euphoria of having only the second black mayor in New York City's history, what he's going to be up against. And he is going to be up against serious special interests that are going to want to take him out.
So is the democratic process,
yes,
inevitably designed, if not designed, condemned to this kind of special interests? Because this is very relevant to us in the Caribbean, you know, because
this is the problem.
Yes.
The problem is, we say as political campaign strategists, money is the mother's milk of politics in the United States, and I suspect all over the world, but to a really extreme extent, the United States, you can't run for president right now in this modern dispensation if you can't raise $11 billion. That's the kind of money you're talking about. In New York City, the city council, which is the municipal, the lowest levels, this local government, the city council, a city council district is home to about 167,000 people. And it takes about $180,000 at the low end, a bare bones budget, to run for city council and be successful. So when you go up the ladder to the governor's race,
it's more money.
An insane amount of money is being spent by campaigns
candidates.
And candidates.
Yes.
And of course, if you look at Brooklyn, for example, where the median household income for a family of 4 is just about $40,000 in this day and age, you find that poor people in Flatbush, East Flatbush, the less affluent parts of the borough, cannot contribute in the way, for example, that, and I'm just using this as a point of reference, an entrenched Jewish affluent community in the area can finance. So that you find that and when politicians get elected, which is the unfortunate thing, even though that they campaign in poetry that they are going to serve all of the residents of a particular district, because of modern technology, I can tell you as an individual voter, a registered Democrat, how many times you voted in the last 20 years, if you voted for which president, which borough president, which mayor, which council member, which senator. And therefore I can target my resources only to those who I think is going to vote in both the primary and general elections. Let us take an example. Where I live in East Flatbush is in the 45th Council District. There are 75,000 registered Democrats in the city council, in this council district. You know how many votes in the primary? 3,000 and 4,000 or 10,000.
Really?
If you're lucky. And in the general, where you vote from top to bottom, where Republicans can vote, you get probably about 15,000 people coming out to vote. That's the problem.
What has happened then? People have lost confidence in the system, them don't care, or they're just complacent. And how do you change any of that from your experience?
Well, the good news is that you're seeing New York again is leading this fundamental change. The new city council that is being sworn in as we speak, there are 31 women in it, a record. No place in the United States has had that. Indeed, all over the world. So New York is leading this way. 31 women, and they come from diverse backgrounds. To the first Muslim female council member. Good. But the first Black Speaker of the House, Adrian Adam, and her name is Adrian Adams. She's being sworn in this morning. Right. And a number of firsts from the LGBT community, etc., and other communities, they are there. And you have 11 mothers, 11 women with children, mothers.
That to me, that is very important. Yes, women with children have a very good political judgment usually.
Exactly. And so I am
especially if they're Black and pregnant.
Exactly.
Yes.
I am very, very optimistic that these changes. And one of the reasons why I'm getting back into the city council after spending 8 years with Yvette and Kendall Short years ago, I'm going back as a director of communication for Council Member Darlene Neely, because I know that I bring the kind of experience to the city council now. And in my neck of the woods, there is one particular council member, a Haitian young lady named Mercedes Nassis, who I literally trained and worked with to make her a candidate. I didn't do her campaign last year. And the interesting thing is, her campaign was run by a protege of mine, a Jamaican young lady named Dr. Zulima Blair, who is a statistics lecturer at McGivers College and one of the experts on his district in this state. So I'm very, very pleased and proud to be associated.
Well, we're glad to meet you and to introduce you to the diaspora community through Irie Jam Radio, and indeed to us in Jamaica. Happy to know you and happy to have that connection. But I need to, before we complete, I need to ask Mr. Michael Derrick Roberts. I mean, what is happening to the liberal enterprise in your politics, sir? I mean, it appears to me that you may be in a liberal bubble in New York where you can have LGBT and women and all of these others. But at the same time, throughout the great United States, you're the exception because voting rights are being compromised. The Congress remains hamstrung, and the example of at least some kind of fidelity, commitment to democratic ideals is severely under siege. Mr. Michael David Roberts, the America is not the shining star for the Caribbean anymore, sir.
It's not. And unfortunately, we've seen it play out in real time. People like me who, and some of my other colleagues in the Democratic Party who have been around, we literally appalled at what is happening. We held our noses and voted for a president who promised much, but as 1 year has passed, he's proven to be, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, a weak president.
Yeah, but what is he to do? What is he to do when, in fact, you people on the liberal fringe, I place myself there, but I'm playing devil's advocate. Put a list of demands. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, puts a set of demands in the Progressive Caucus, which couldn't pass.
Of course. And
so what is the use of doing that? All you do
unrealistic expectations.
Unrealistic expectations
within the Democratic Party.
Yeah. So you set up Joe Biden.
Well, yes and no.
Yes.
No. Yes and no. Here's the reason why.
Yeah.
To date, the biggest problem, and I'm looking at this from a political campaign strategist hat. The problem with the Biden administration right now, despite all of its weaknesses and missteps and so forth, is really abysmal messaging. The American, listen, the family leave part of the Biden plan,
yes,
literally lifts poor people and children out of poverty.
Of course. So why come up with a $3.5 trillion program when you knew that Manchin wouldn't even let a trillion pass? It don't make sense. You string him up.
No, I understand that. When it comes to the Senate, I have a problem because I again, Senate leadership in the form of Chuck Schumer, I think it's very, very much incoherent. It's not strong as it should be.
I'm really getting a lesson in political realpolitik from you. But I would like to tell you that Una better decide to hug up Biden and Chuck Schumer, because any way that the infighting and the fracture in the Democratic Party persists, Una go and get Trump and Mike Pence back again, and worse.
Or worse.
Yes, sir.
Worse.
So I mean, that don't make sense.
We're not under no illusion as what is happening.
Yeah.
I am scared.
Well, the best way to get rid of the scaring is to work very hard for some kind of accommodation. No. Yes?
We are.
Yes.
We are working very, very hard.
Yes, man. And
I'm going forward and so forth.
My just before we part, my heroine in that regard is a woman named Stacey Abrams in Georgia.
Oh, yes.
Because what she's doing is pounding the streets, and she's saying no matter the voting restrictions that the Georgia legislature has brought into effect, I'm going to go and knock on every door and make sure that every black person overcomes every obstacle and goes and votes.
And there is no in this business,
no other way.
There is no other way to win elections than to knock doors.
Yes. Well,
so I agree with her 160%.
It seems to me there has to be a real realignment, and comes very quickly. But then, you're very kind because you're accommodating the views of a retired politician in Jamaica, fasting in the business of the great United States, and more particularly the very intricate and fascinating politics of New York City, of which you are the consummate strategist. Thank you so much for this interview. Let's keep in touch on the public eye. All the best.
Absolutely.
Mr. Michael Derrick Roberts, Grenadian American and political strategist. You won't hear that kind of discussion elsewhere on the Jamaican, on the diaspora media. And that's it for the public eye today. What a nice thing. Opening the new year with some electric discussions about mining in Jamaica and political realignment in New York City. Beauregard, what you thought?
Very, very interesting, sir. Very interesting.
Did you know this guy? Because he seems to be deeply engaged in areas that Irie Jam covers.
Not personally, no.
Yes.
I haven't, no.
But you better fix your face and accommodate. Otherwise, Trump going to Trump you.
No, I don't think Trump stand another chance. Boy,
I'm glad
tomorrow,
you know.
Tomorrow is the anniversary of the Capitol riots. So that's going to be interesting.
Boy, it's a day of mourning.
Yes.
Only people don't. All of you mincing around this and that, and the people who did that thing guilty as charged. Without charge. Bo, thanks so much for the company today. Here till next time.
All right, no problem.
All right, and thanks so much to all of those who make the public eye possible. And those who listen to us on the bridge on Irie Jam Radio and on our live stream, www.thebridge99fm.com. Thanks to producer LaFane Wigan, technical operator Richie Rainford, and the entire production team here at the Bridge 99 FM and the Irie Jam family in New York. To the world. Have a great afternoon, everyone.